Hi, good afternoon. Thank you very much for giving this talk and for inviting me here. I must say that the story today is amazing. I like how it started with Rakow's first slides on innovations, and then how it unfolded with all of this research, finally with a very particular application of science. And now I'm probably wrapping it up, coming back to innovation, because this is what my talk is about. How you can actually think about your research, about what you're doing, make it into something innovative that actually applies somewhere. Because probably after seeing all this talk today, especially the last one, you may be very inspired with going somewhere forward. So this is what my talk will be about. And also, I would like to encourage you also not only in a way that you must fund a startup or something like this, because most of us are not in this stage right now, but you can apply innovations in a lot of scenarios. Innovation can become part of your student scientific committee project that you can do during your studies. Innovations, for example, for me, is what I do in my daily job when I'm in a service company. We are working for another companies, yeah, but this is also where we are applying innovation. So I encourage you to think about innovations much wider than only as a founder of a company or things like this. When we were thinking about innovation, Rafa already did something, but I asked two most famous probably scholars right now, so ChatGPT and Cloud AI, and they told me some very similar answers about what innovation actually is. And you can see that those guys are telling me that innovation is about meeting unmet needs, about improving something and making something better, also creating something new and providing value. You see, it is not only about doing something, about creating something, but it's also about the second part, about providing value, meeting some needs, also about the second part after you build it. And this comes to what I see as an innovation. I really like this collocation that is here, innovative solution, because the word solution is also have some meaning. To solve, you need the problem to solve. And this is a very important part of innovation. My definition of innovation is to solve a problem that no one solved before, or solve the old problem, but in a better way. Story about innovation is all about the problems that you can solve, not only about what you are building and what you are delivering here. And the very first thing that you should remember about innovations is that most innovations fail. This is something correct. There's no problem with the fact that innovation fails. I really like this picture that I put on the slide here, that in successful companies, even more innovations fails than in those that are struggling. The failing innovation is a learning process. This is information that you are getting from the process of innovation. Actually, the problem is sometimes when some innovations fail in a bad way. Because there are three patterns that I see from innovation to innovation that is failing in a bad way, that you're not learning enough, or that you are not getting something more from this. And those three patterns are here, yeah? And I would like to tell you a bit about those three patterns with some stories that I've seen over the years. The first pattern that I see is avoiding failure. So you don't want to fail. Actually, nobody wants to fail. People have this desire to win, to achieve something. This is very natural, and you may avoid the failure. From the thing that I recall, for example, working with a really huge pharmaceutical company. They have a pleasure to work with them for years right now. They have a really brilliant R&D team. The team of excellent scientists. They have this process of applying to research funds year after year. Just like in academia. Year after year, they need to apply for funding, they need to propose some project that they will deliver, and they are really avoiding the failure, because when they show that they are failing, their funding may be in danger. And the way that they're working on some projects is really, really striking me, because they are working on some algorithm, they are building some applications internally, never showing it to actual users, and then after 2 years, for example, I've seen this case working with larger teams, so a lot of budget was used for this, and after 2-3 years of development, they showed this application, and what he heard from users is, okay, but we don't want to use it, we have another application for the very same purpose, and so on and so on. This guy is right now not very happy about his position in this company. So this is the first pattern. Yeah, but even if you show it to somebody, even when you are open with what you are building, you may not be listening enough. This is another story that I got actually right now from my team, so this is only about blaming other people, because we had this project in which we had a customer who asked us to do some analysis. And when we heard about this analysis that needs to be done, we said, okay, so we know what to do, we will deliver your report. We did the analysis, we did the study, we delivered the report, and they said, we asked you to do something, but you delivered us a bioinformatics report. And this is not exactly what we wanted to get. We asked you to solve the problem, to analyze the data, but the bioinformatics report is not what we wanted to have, because we have our bioinformatics team in our company. We actually did the very similar research before. What we wanted from you was to apply an AI technique technique so that we were able to compare how AI solves the problem and how classical bioinformatics solves the problem. The issue here that we had was that we were not listening enough to those guys. We heard the first question, can you analyze the data? We said, okay, we know what to do. We went for that. We never scratched the surface. We never dug deeper to understand actually what is the problem that they want to solve. Because the problem was not this analysis itself. The problem was to compare two different techniques of solving the scientific question. And I think the most painful probably pattern that I see is falling in love with your idea. Because sometimes you are so focused on what you want to deliver, of your idea, you have this creation in your mind that, okay, when I build this software, do this experiment, I will change the world. Everything will be changed, it will be amazing innovation. And you don't want to hear anybody. This is even the pattern in which something much more toxic happens. You try to, for example, talk with people, and you come to this talk and you are talking all the time about your idea, how great your idea is. You are not really listening to feedback. You are actually sometimes telling people that they are wrong. They don't know what to do. You know what to do here. This is not the way most people want to talk with you, and you are actually blocking your possibility to develop your innovation, to improve it, and to actually navigate it through the potential failure. So these are those three patterns that I see. And actually from those patterns, what I can put here to summarize this slide is that innovation is actually a people skill. It's much more people skill than technical skill. Like two key terms about innovation is the problem and the value. Yeah, and to know the problem, you need to know people, because problem is not like entity that exists somewhere else. Problem is something that person has. If no one has this problem doesn't exist. It's only a theoretical thing that maybe on academia is very important, but in general it's not something that you can build innovation around. And the second part is the value. Also, to understand the value, you need to understand the people. Because when you think about value, I don't only mean money. Because, okay, this is the simplest way to quantify the value of something, but the value can also be time, value can be dedication, value can be anything that is some resource that you are using to gratify something. For example, when you are writing a scientific paper, you are cited. You are not getting money for this, unfortunately, but you are citing this is some value. So this is also something. And to get cited, you also should understand what people will be cited. Because you may write a paper about something that no one will ever read, no one will ever cite this paper. So these are those two very important people skills, crucial to actually develop some innovation. When you are thinking also about innovations, you probably came upon this quote that is attributed to Henry Ford, but actually he never said it. That if he asked people what they wanted when building the first Ford, like a century ago, they would say that they want faster horses. And actually, as I said, this quote never happened because, first of all, the problem that the early car was solving was not the speed. Actually, Ford Model T is more or less the same, equally fast as a horse. If it was checked, there's a YouTube, you can take a look. The problem that was solving was the maintenance and price. But it shows how a lot of people are taking a look at the problems. They see some time frame from the whole picture. They see how the car looks right now. They take a look at the Ferrari, for example. It's quite a fast car, and it's much faster than a horse. But in the beginning, when this innovation was actually brewing, when it was starting, it was not the case. Okay? So you should actually think much deeper about the problem, rather than just take a look and think that you understand. I compiled this iceberg graphic meme. It's actually describing the way that you can interact with the problem. Because what I see a number of times is when people come to me to ask for some service, and usually they interact with us and tell, okay, so I want you to build me a database. And this is quite a straightforward project, in theory at least, to compile a database and put some data inside. But if you don't ask enough, this project may be a disaster, because actually when you ask this person, why do you want a database? They say, okay, I need to organize data for my studies. Okay, so you want to organize data, so maybe database is not the perfect solution, because you may have some pieces of data that are not fitting the traditional database, maybe you want a data lake, maybe anything else. But you should dig deeper. Why do you want to organize the data? This person will tell you that, okay, I get lost in all the results I get. I'm really lost in all the files that they have and so on and so on. Okay, so what is the actual problem with the thing that you are getting lost in the results? Because it sounds like a problem itself, but dig deeper. And this person can tell you that, okay, so I get lost and I don't know how to plan my project. I don't know what experiments to do next. I get kind of lost in putting some strategy on my project. And this is getting much more interesting, much more far away from building a database. And when you dig deep enough, you may get to this bottom of this iceberg. The person can tell you, for example, that if he or she doesn't find a target for for example, that can start a new program, biotech company, the research budget will be cut or the person can be fired. And this is totally distinct problem than building a database. Like you have building a database or looking for a target. So two different projects, two different solutions. You can build two different companies around those two different cases. And this is the path that needs to be studied all the time, that you are interacting with people who may have some problems when you are trying to innovate something. You need to understand really well where this problem comes from and where it may go. So now maybe something more positive about success stories that are in the area of innovations. Here I have also three patterns, three distinct stories. The first one is that if you say something, you should follow your recipient. And here is the story from totally different industry, not biotech, but a software. Quite an old story about the company who was having this service. Hotel came to the software company and asked to build a very basic software for showing something in the TV screen in the hotel room. After doing this simple project, this software company came with the idea, okay, so we built this for one hotel, there is like plenty of hotels in Poland. You can go around the country and ask them if they want to have something like this. And years after years, this software became a product, a huge innovative product where when you go to like 4 and 5 stars hotels in Poland, you will see the very same software that is showing this weather forecasts, some travel information. It all started with a single request from one hotel. I've seen a very similar pattern, for example, in case of the company that I work with, where we had this one particular project where we were asked to analyze some data. Actually, it was also selecting data. And then we understood, okay, so there's a lot of places where self-picking data are generated, where we can apply it, and this is also where we are able to start building some product around. This is the very first case. You should listen to people and you should follow what they are telling you. The second part is to be ready to pivot always. Like, not to fall in love with your solution, but to be always open to what you are observing out there among people who are using or who are rejecting your innovation. Because there is another story also from a software, quite an old one, so a bit of software archaeology right now. But there was a company that like 25 years ago came with idea, probably one of the first in Poland, to send invoices over internet. It was in the time that the internet was, dialing in and so on, so it was quite futuristic. But they had this idea that you can send invoices over the internet between companies, it will be much more efficient, you can pay it over internet and so on. Right now this is a default way to go. Back in the days it was all the paperwork. They were trying to sell it, it wasn't that simple. People were not trusting internet enough, it was hard. And actually when they were meeting one guy at the power plant, he told them, okay, this is cool idea, but I have another problem, let me show you. And they walked those guys to the place that people were queuing in line to pay the electric bills. Because they were doing it way in the 90s with cash mostly. And he thought, okay, so I have like thousands of people who need to pay their bills by the end of the month. And they all need to come here, also because it's cheaper than to do it over the post, for example. And there is a huge line. If you solve this problem, this is much more valuable for me than sending payments and invoices over the internet. And they thought, okay, so we have some technology. The technology enables us to pay over the internet for invoice. Why don't pivot it and enable people to pay their bills over the internet? But where they should be pay those bills? So they came up with idea to pay those bills in shop. When they are buying groceries, they can buy, bread, butter, and pay bills in the same place. And the software was more or less similar, but maybe the same, but the business case was totally different. And this was where they were open, they were listening to the feedback, and they adapted the existing not so successful solution to something that was quite big in early 21st century. Right now, internet obviously kills it, but back in the days, it was a success story. And the last one, pattern, is even if you fail, don't forget what you built and look for more problems. Because this is actually my story about a very tiny innovation that started on the second stage in this building when there was a project in which I was asked to verify whether some introns they are having the very same or different ends. I built a very simple algorithm to analyze those introns, the places where actually introns are glued in the splicing process. There was an analysis. I wanted to do my PhD project around this, but like a few weeks later I've seen that, okay, there are 3 papers much better than mine. So I abandoned this project, I went for microbiome. And like 2 years ago we seen that in the microbiome area, in the metagenomic analysis, we see that this mapping of identical rates from different organisms to the same reference, it may be contaminating the results. And I applied the very same algorithm in a different way, so that I was not only looking at how sharp is the end of coverage on the edge of the intron, but I was applying it to measure how smooth is the mapping over the genome of organism, whether we see those spikes from cross-mapping. So this was this story about looking for quite distinct problems after the failure. And when you are also thinking about innovations, you should remember that innovations come in all sizes. It can be very, very basic, like Krakow, probably the biggest Polish innovation ever. It's like a bit smart at least. It's just like a tin box that you put your mobile number, you put your some code, and you get your package. Like the simplest thing ever, huge innovation. On the other side of the spectrum, we have SpaceX exploring space in an agile way. So it can come in all sizes, but since we are bioinformaticians more or less here, in bio it's rarely accessed. Even those simpler innovations like NF core community, it's like building pipelines. This is still, you need to build a community. There are some areas where you are applying old solutions to new problems. I don't know, for example, the COVID vaccine with mRNA, applying hidden Markov models to sequences, or applying AWS to data from omics studies. This is not that simple that you just take something old and apply to a new business. This always comes with a twist. This is never that straightforward as, for example, applying 1.8-inch hard drive to an iPod and making it 1,000 songs in your pocket. Because this was the innovation. They put a smaller hard drive that was out there in the market for 10 years and they made the first iPod. This wasn't very, very revolutionary. It was more like a revolutionary thinking than development. Here, what we are seeing, CRISPR nanopore, it's something that was in development for 25 years, at least from emerging of this idea. It all based on some prior research. So those innovations in bio are rarely accessed. It needs patience. I list here microbiology-therapeutics. This is where we are still waiting for something that we can call an actual innovation that is out there, that's still in development. So when we are thinking about where to innovate, I really like this two-axis plot that shows two risks about innovating that we should navigate to manage those risks, manage the failure risk, and manage the way that we may fail. As I said, in most cases we will at least a few times fail, but we can manage the way we are failing and we can manage what we are learning from our failures. The first risk is a building risk. So how difficult is it to build something? What is the risk that we will work on something that it will be undoable? And the second risk is a value risk. So what is the risk that no one will find what we are building valuable? And here you can see the sweet spot on this diagonal where only one risk is high, the second is low. It means that we are doing something that is not trivial, but also it's not fully risky. There is obviously this part for trailblazers where you are developing PCR, when you develop bow tie. This was like very early innovation, something that was one of the first successes in the area. Right now, if you try to innovate in the area of amplification of genomic sequence, it wouldn't be that easy that you just develop PCR. For example, there is this minimap 2 here that I put in this area. If it was used only for short reads, it would probably not be that successful. It would not probably be that demanded. The value risk would be much higher. But you are applying it to long reads, and it makes it in a niche. And when you are working in a niche, the value risk is much lower, because in a niche, probably there you can find something very specific about those features that are applied to this niche. But when you take a look, most of biology is in this left top area. Biology, bioinformatics. The more science, the higher the building risk is. And when you are doing this, you also need to work on this value risk to make as low as possible. Because this is not like a standard software that you can always make a button that will be clickable one way or another, and you only need to find a way to make people click this button. Here you always have this risk that it may not work. Yeah? You are building a machine learning model, there may be nothing in the data. You are doing it therapeutic, it may not work. It may be toxic, it may not be binding, and so on and so on. Like most of the biology, as you can see also by this crowd, is in this area. This is one last area where the value risk is high, the building risk is high. Right now, microbiology-therapeutics are there. People are not necessarily understanding this modality. The pharma companies, we are not sure if they will be paying for this. Also, as every therapeutic, it is incredibly risky to build. But there was also this mRNA cancer vaccine story here. It's quite important because it was for years in this part of the map, because people were developing like those CureVac, Moderna, and so on. They were developing mRNA cancer vaccines for years. It was like a struggle. And then when COVID happened, apparently the value risk was much lower. Yeah? Everybody wanted to have this vaccine. It was the fastest, the simplest way to build a new vaccine for those guys. And this technology just needed to wait for the right moment. So just to close this presentation, so how to innovate? I highlighted here like 3 approaches that you can take. The one that I believe is right. You can do research, but research is about discovering things, gaining more and more knowledge. You can do projects, but projects are mostly about doing something. Yeah, you have those tasks, you need to deliver tasks. What I like to apply to innovation, how I like to think about innovation, is to think in a product way. Because once again, I asked ChatGPT to define product for me, and this is exactly what is very important here. Product is something that not only involves creating, developing of things, but it also involves this meeting or solving a problem. This is the way that innovation can actually be built. And here, just to close one last slide, what people think innovation is. I really like this image. You can find it probably everywhere in the internet, but this is very important, like a short graphical abstract of the stock. Most people think that innovation is about building new products, developing new technology. This is important at some point, but what is really important is learning about customers or recipients if you are not talking about something that you sell, but you share it the other way. Also testing ideas, collecting evidence, learning. This third part is killing ideas that will not work. You need to be ready to kill your idea. You need to be ready to say, okay, it's no way to go, we need to change something, but we learn something from this lighter gray part, and ultimately where we are sure what you should do, you can start building. And a great tool to navigate this value canvas, this is something that you can Google, and if you want to start something, scientific club at the university, have some project, you want to do this project right away, you want to make sure this project will be seen somewhere, it's a great way to start with this, also a scientific project. To think who will be the recipient of your scientific project and what you will actually be bringing to the audience. Thank you.